Breaking news within the boxing world once again. Man, it never disappoints and is very, very busy all year long as Jake Paul and Gervonta Tank Davis have agreed to an exhibition bout in Atlanta, Georgia for November the 14th, live on Netflix. When I first heard this news announced, I was completely baffled, completely surprised, as I believe that most of you were. Obviously, this fight has been in the making for the past couple of months. This was a fight that was supposed to take place following the Gervonta Davis-Lamont Roach bout. Jake Paul was even in attendance for that fight. He was supposed to go into the ring and be facing off against Tank following that for them to be able to announce it. But then Tank, obviously getting into the draw with Lamont Roach, wanted to go ahead and focus and settle that rematch, which now does not look like it is going to happen and probably will never happen, which is kind of the first point that I want to make of this whole thing and my reaction and my thoughts about it. My first reaction was Gervonta Tank Davis's career is over. I know that we made a video for him a couple of weeks back after there was a rumored retirement announcement coming from him. But this to me is his retirement announcement because even after this fight, whether he wins or loses it, which it really doesn't matter if he does, and we'll get to that in a little bit, he shouldn't really be respected anymore in the boxing space. And, that makes me sad. The man has had some really, really great moments throughout his career, but he's kind of shoving it all away for this big time payday and avoiding a rematch mandatory for his lightweight title. So the considerment of being one of the top faces of boxing, the considerment of being, a top 15, top 10 pound for pound fighter, for being the best lightweight in the world, I think that we have to all throw that away at this point. And for Jake Paul, what a get for him. I mean, he was supposed to face off against Anthony Joshua at the end of the year, and that fight was, considerably moving very, very quickly forward. It ended up falling through, as it was reported by Mike Coppinger, due to a network dispute with Anthony Joshua obviously being tied down a lot to, Showtime Sports and DAZN. Jake Paul obviously signing away this new deal with Netflix and him wanting to fight more and more there. So they got into a little bit of a network dispute, didn't end up going through. And he gets what, in my opinion, is a much, much easier fight for him. And a fight that really, there's no risk at all. I mean, what is the real risk for Jake Paul in this? If he loses to one of the best boxers that we've seen in about a decade in Gervonta Tank Davis, a solidified world champion who has fought against, some great fighters throughout his career. Yes, I understand that he is a lot smaller. We're talking about, like a 8-inch size difference, an 8-inch arm length advantage for Jake Paul and whatnot. But the experience gap is just so wide. And if he wins, he's only going to reap the benefits. Again, a lot of people are going to look at it as Gervonta is a lot smaller, and I understand that, but he is also a really, really big time name within the boxing space. Which kind of brings me to the point of this video, which is how much of a circus is this fight really going to be? What is kind of the regulation and the rules and how this fight is realistically going to play out? How do we really break this down? Well, when it comes to weight, it's really difficult because, like I said, this is a massive size difference between the two. Gervonta pretty much has campaigned his entire career at 135 pounds. This is at about 5'5". Jake Paul in his last couple of fights, I believe, has been weighing north of 200, so about 200 to 220 pounds. He normally competes at cruiserweight, which is at about a 200-pound limit, and he sits at 6'1" tall. So we're talking about a massive size difference. If I were to guess, I think that this is going to get played out a lot like Floyd Mayweather and Logan Paul ended up playing out, where Logan could only weigh a certain limit of weight. I think that it was 190 or a 195-pound limit. And then Floyd, I think he could fluctuate throughout whatever. I think his cap was at about like 170, 165 or whatnot. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. But that's pretty much how I see this fight really happening, especially because Tank is even smaller than Floyd. Floyd had a couple of campaigns at junior middleweight at 154. Gervonta, like I said, is 20 pounds lighter at 135. I don't assume that there's going to be really any weight limit for Gervonta Davis at the end of the day in this fight. And for Jake, it's probably going to be a similar bar. Jake is a little bit smaller than Logan, so maybe it might be a little bit lower of a weight, maybe 185 or lower than that. But still, I mean, even if Jake can get down to 185 and Gervonta gets up to, let's even say that Gervonta is able to get up to around middleweight at about 161, we're still talking about a 24-pound difference within that. Not to mention the fact that Jake will likely be able to blow up following that. So he'll probably blow up all the way up to 200 pounds. Gervonta not gaining, much weight. And Gervonta, with that amount of weight on his frame, we've talked about Terrence Crawford moving up 2 weight divisions and going all the way up to 168. But, he has a pretty solid frame to carry that. For Gervonta Davis to go up to 160, 161 pounds, for him to be able to carry that type of weight, it is going to slow him down tremendously, which, as Jake Paul pointed out on his Instagram, is really a big contention in this fight, is Gervonta Davis's speed. It's his precision boxing. So with him being a lot slower, a lot of that advantage for him is going to end up being taken away. And the power, it's not really going to matter because of the size difference. I'm honestly concerned to see if Gervonta Davis can even reach Jake Paul. I mean, with an 8-inch arm length advantage. That's how much of a difference we are really talking about right here. When it comes to the breakdown and the real analysis of this fight, I'm not really sure, man. To me, it sounds really ridiculous to say, but I don't see a world where Jake really loses. I mean, I understand that the skill gap is humongous, but I don't see a way where Gervonta can really hurt Jake Paul. And if Jake is even able to land one hard punch in what is supposed to be, I believe, a 10-round, 3-minute round type fight, so 30 minutes of action, just one punch is going to have Gervonta Davis stumbling back. A huge body shot might hurt Tank Davis tremendously. It could be a really, really difficult night for Tank. And Jake, with his size ability, I mean, he could smother Tank on the ropes and just keep his arms right here having to defend and completely swing on him and hurt Tank. Like, it's just going to be a very, very difficult night for Tank to win, which is another reason why I question why he really took it, because it doesn't seem like he's really giving himself much of a chance. And I understand that the payday is huge, that was obviously one of the big reasons, and he has talked about finishing out his career by the end of this year. And so you're looking for one big way to go out, but do you really want the final fight of your career to be losing to Jake Paul just so that you could get upwards of 20, 25, 30 plus million potentially? I mean, maybe. I understand that money is more important than legacy at times, especially for these boxers who income isn't continuous for. But it just stinks for a guy whose legacy is already pretty shaky at most, having to go out and take this big time risk and him not really holding much of a chance to even begin with. There's also a question about how hard they're really going to go into this, and even the glove size of this, because obviously it's not a sanctioned bout with the size difference. We'll have to see what the gloves look like. I'm not sure what the parameters are around an amateur fight. I'm not sure if you can completely not do 10-ounce gloves in a exhibition bout. I don't know if you have to do, a certain limit, if it has to be 14 plus ounces. I'm not really sure. As for the pace of the fight and how hard they're going to go, I mean, exhibitions are always pretty wonky when it comes to that. You never really know how it's going to go. That is another reason why I question why Gervonta is really taking this, because I'm thinking, is Jake really going to take this seriously and want to go out and knock him out and hurt him really badly? Or is Tank doing this because he knows that he's going to get a big payday? And at the end of the day, even if he loses, he's not going to get knocked out. And maybe they just take it easy, and throw a couple of jabs and maybe make a couple of rounds, really, really competitive and go super hard. But other than that, kind of just cruise to the finish. We'll have to see about that. But in my eyes, if you're Jake Paul and you're taking this fight, you want to go for the knockout, for the finish. Even if this is against a guy who is much smaller, it is a world championship, a world-class type of name. And just on Jake really quick and his career projection and his career path, a lot of people are saying that he does this all the time, that he kind of veers off into different paths and whatnot, that he says that he wants to become a world champion, then he kind of goes away from that. In my opinion, I think that this fight for him is just simply a filler fight to be honest. I think that the real target for him is Badu Jack for that WBC cruiserweight title. I don't think that he really has any intentions of going after a guy like Zerto Ramirez or Jai Alpataya, which I completely understand. Those guys completely outskill him and are his size, if not even bigger than him. So I completely understand not wanting to take that risk if you want to become a world champion. Badu Jack is completely the right path to go because of his older age, because of the wear and tear on him and whatnot. That is definitely the direction that he needs to go. But because Badu is involved in a rematch with his previous challenger, that obviously leaves Jake without a fight till next year, potentially early next year, to face off against Badu if he were to win that rematch. And so he needs somebody to be able to fill in. Again, it's another big time payday for a fight that really isn't too much big of a risk for Jake. So I see it as a little bit of a filler fight. I do think that we will end up seeing Jake in a world championship position to be able to fight for a world title and fighting for a world title. Probably by early to mid next year. I think that he'll probably get the Badu fight. If not, maybe he could take a risk against Zerto or whatnot, but I definitely think that that is coming. It might not be the right decision. It might be a little bit forced. Jake could potentially get really hurt, but hey, I got to give him big time props for wanting to try. And as for the Anthony Joshua fight, I mean, I don't necessarily want to see that fight dead. I possibly would hope to see both sides want to come to the table and maybe work something out one last time. Just because, I mean, it's a much more interesting fight than the Tank fight, just simply based off the fact that AJ is bigger than Jake. And obviously, there is still that skill gap that there is between Jake and Gervonta. So, it would be a very difficult night for Jake, and it would be a little bit worrying for him to potentially get hurt. But overall, I think that it would just be it'd be a much more entertaining fight and a much more risky fight for Jake. I think a lot of people would care a lot more about it. And I think that's one of the reasons why, you hear this announcement and it is supposed to be this big fight, and it will be. It'll do big pay-per-view draws. It probably won't be on the level of like Jake and Mike Tyson. It might be a little bit underneath that, but people will definitely tune in. But I don't think that people are very amused by this, just seeing as because of the huge size difference, because there's not a huge risk. I don't think that a lot of people are really thinking that there is really anything crazy that's going to happen here. I think that Jake is going to end up pretty much dominating and potentially even knocking Tank out, which one last time, because of who Tank is really sad to see. But overall, let me know what you think down below in the comments section. What do you think about this fight and it was announced? What do you think the parameters are going to be when it comes to the weight, the glove size, for the pace that they're going to be fighting out? What is your prediction overall for the fight? And what do you think that this really makes for Jake Paul and Gervonta Tank Davis' career? In my opinion, Tank is probably going to retire after this fight. And for Jake Paul, it's the easiest night of your life. You beat a current world champion, one of the top pound-for-pound fighters in the world. Could potentially, we've seen crazier things before. Jake beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and was able to hop into top 15. Beating Tank Davis might get him higher within the cruiserweight rankings, which would still blow my mind, but it's just absolutely insane. So let me know about all those down below in the comment section, as well as subscribing to the channel, leaving a like, and sharing with your friends. And if you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on all social medias, that being TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those ads are going to be down below so that you can never miss for whenever the podcast decides to upload an episode. And without further ado, guys, that's all that I have for you guys today. I will see you guys on the next one. Have a great rest of your week, and peace.